Sienna, give me a number between 3 and 10. 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Austin. Wow, welcome back. Usually fun. I don't know if you've been keeping it up with the stuff. This is what we covered yesterday. I know you weren't here, so I guess we're just going to let you do your best here. What, have you heard of mutual funds? Do you know what it is, or roughly? Yeah. Okay, what is it?
So it's a group of people who invest.
What's that?
A group of people who invest.
Okay. Mutually are putting money in together, right? So what is it composed of? So 1, 2, 3, 4, Alyssa. In other words, what's a mutual fund? You got a bunch of people that are kind of mutually funding an investment, but what are they actually investing in? I'll give you a hint. Do you remember that spider web I did yesterday? You were here yesterday, right? Yeah. Remember that little picture? Marks. Maybe you got it in your notes if you have that from yesterday. This thing. That's your big hint. What are we investing in? What sort of stuff do you want to invest in? Maybe you can think back to just all of what we talked about yesterday. In general, what are you putting your money into? If you're putting in $100 into something, what are you buying? Or what is Dave suggesting that you're buying? You're buying mutual funds, but ultimately, what are you doing? Different companies, very good, right? So that's all you're doing is you're buying companies. So your mutual fund sits here, and you might buy $100 worth of the Vanguard SP 500. We had the call numbers last time. And so what you're really putting your $100 into is 500 different companies. One of those is Apple, Microsoft, Mickey D's, Walmart, whatever. And so that company, you and thousands of other people are mutually funding all of these companies. And so that thing might be worth $1 billion, literally. Like you might have mutually funded, we're not talking small potatoes. You and thousands of other people have $1 billion in this sucker, right? So we're talking some big time money, but that's the beauty of it. You get your little slice so that when you buy $100 of this mutual fund share, you're buying one share of this mutual fund, then you instantly are buying 5% of Apple. So you just put $5 into Apple. You just put $3 into Microsoft. You just put $2 into McDonald's. Okay, so it's important to keep that in mind as we move into the next material. We're going to be a little bit more directed. I kind of foreshadowed it a little bit with our talk on small cap, mid cap, large cap. So does anybody remember when we did the S&P 500? That was the top 500 companies. Was that a large cap companies or small cap companies? Large. These are the biggest companies, right? We're only going to put 25% of your long-term investments into those big companies because sometimes when the big companies are down, the small companies are up. So that's possible. So we're going to diversify even further than 500 of the big companies, which is a lot of diversification, by the way. 500 of the biggest companies, that's diversification right there. But we're going to even go further beyond that and put our fractional money in different pots. All right, so that's where this chapter is this section 4 is going to be a little more specific on where we're going to put our money. So we'll watch this and then we'll do a little more discussion. So investment stuff here. Pull out a piece of paper and pencil. Our in-class stuff today. All right, so I want you to answer question number 1 here. And that is, what excites you about investing? When will you be ready to invest? What excites you about investing? And when will you be ready to invest? Answer those 2 questions for starters. All right, let's get some sharing going here. So, where did I off of? Listen, 1, 2, 3, 4. Sultan, what excites you about investing?
The fact that you invest your money and making more money.
Okay, it's just the idea of making money. So on the flip side of that, how does the chance of losing money hit you?
It kind of sucks, but if you kind of stick it out, do thick and thin, eventually you will be seeing more money than you possibly do.
On a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the most risky and 1 being the most avoiding of risk, or the where do you feel you are on a scale of 1 to 10 on a risk scale? So 10, you're willing to take lots of risk, very risky, or try to avoid risk being number 1 on a scale of 1 to 10. Where do you find yourself?
An 8.
An 8. Okay, so
So
yeah, I don't think you were here. We did that. Did we do that yesterday? The risk scale? Yeah. So those of you who weren't here yesterday, we had everybody kind of go around. That's why I asked you, because everybody's got a different tolerance for risk. And so if you're an 8, you're probably higher than the average person. I think we kind of went around the room and ranged from, we had some people like around 4, didn't we? Like 4 to 7, I think even. I don't think we had another 8. So, because I've got something to say for both the people at the high end and the low end. What was my advice for the people on the low end? If you were, risk scares me, I don't want to put my money at risk. What was the advice for people that were 4s and 5s and maybe even 6s? But
Scared money don't make money.
scared money don't make money. Okay, that wasn't exactly my advice, but that's because that sounds like a risky thing to me. Like, right? Like, you got to put it at risk, baby. You got to put it at risk. What did we learn about risk yesterday? Our first steps into kind of trying to digest this. What's the D word? Diversification. Why does that lower risk? All right, so this one is a really important illustration that we did on diversification for starters. So remember, a person was investing $10,000, and this investor got 7% for 25 years. 7% is pretty good. If you're risk averse, like 7% sounds pretty good, like compared to 3% or 4%. But the person who diversified, even if they lost all 2,000, 2,000 earned nothing in a mattress, 2,000 at 5%, 2,000 at 10%, 2,000 at 15%. So you kind of hit the jackpot with only these 2 relative to this one. You with me on that? This is an important lesson here. So it's okay to lose some money. If you're diversified, you're still going to make more money. So this illustration shows 116,000 using those rates of return, using the rate of return calculator. It shows you that you can be in those small cap funds at 25%. And as Dave said, maybe one year they'll hit 100%. And the next year will be negative 30%. That's okay. You just put them in. And by diversifying, you should be able to understand risk better, even if you're risk averse. Now, to my risky friends out there, what's your lesson you need to learn? That it's sexy to put your money in and make some money. Scared money don't make money. I love that one, by the way. That's kind of a good saying. What do the risky people that like the risk need to remember about some of this stuff? Does risky money make money?
They're going to spend the money anyways.
Maybe, well, what do you mean spend their money anyways?
Like, they would spend money that they would invest, instead of investing it, they would spend it on something else.
Okay, well, so you're kind of, I think, asking a little bit of, if you're treating investing like gambling, you can carve out a little bit of gambling out of your budget if you're saying they would have spent it anyway. If you're kind of using it kind of through our budget process, your zero-based budget, it's your budget. If you want to have casino and Bitcoin and something else on single stocks on your budget line, that's your choice. If you're giving up a pizza to throw it at GameStop, right? But make sure you know what you're doing. With your long-term stuff, my advice to the people with a little bit more of a taste for risk is do the same thing that the less risky people are doing. If you really have to, the most that I ever recommend, and I think this came from Dave Ramsey, but it just made sense to me, is never put more than 10% of your overall long-term investments into that risky stuff. And don't, like, if you lose all your money in the risky stuff, don't put a new 10% and then you keep eroding your 90%, right? You'll probably learn your lesson by doing that. But you'll come across an investment where you're super pumped and everybody's doing it and your friends are doing it and they've already made money last month with it. And you're going to be tempted to, like, take that advice and say, gosh, if I did half of my, I've got $75,000 saved up in my long-term investments right now. If I did 40,000, I can really get it big, man. This stuff's running 30% right now. And then it goes, and now your 75 just turned into 35. That's the hard lesson that riskier people with taste for risk have to learn, and you don't have to learn it. If you're disciplined enough, if you research this stuff enough, you can know it. Just from this class, you'll know it. 10%, go ahead, have fun with it, put it in Bitcoin and other stuff, single stocks like we were talking about in the last lesson. But otherwise, 90%, you're just putting in your money each month, putting in your money each month, dollar cost averaging, put it into the 25%, 25%, 25%, 25%, right? That little pie chart. You're just plugging away, living your life, doing that, which can be potentially very boring, but it's your highest probability of becoming a millionaire and hitting your financial goals over the long term. So that at age 50, you can feel really comfortable about life. If you don't like your job, you can tell your boss, screw you, I'm out. Right? You want that sort of power. That sort of financial power is well within your grasp by just following these types of lessons here and putting that money there. Okay, so questions or comments so far? All right, I want to share with you what my son did. So my son is graduating college this spring, so he's 22. And in 2015, the summer of 2015, he was listening to the old dad. He was interested in investing and had listened to me, plenty over time. So I went with him down to American Century Investments. Their world headquarters is located in Kansas City, just so that we made a day of it. We could have done it online, but we thought it would be kind of fun to go down there. And I had one of my first economics graduates was working for American Century. So we got to go there and have lunch with him, and then we sat down with one of their investment advisors and got him into something. So what he did was he put in $2,000 of his own money to get started. He had saved up that much. And then it was set up to do $50 a month for on a regular auto withdrawal. His own money again, not any of Dad's money going into this. And so here is that mutual fund that he bought. It was one of their products, because he was a minor and because he didn't have the minimum amount that you needed to start the investment, he had to use one of their products. But it was it was all equities, it was all stocks, and it was well diversified. It still is today. So I've talked to him about doing the 25% thing, but this fund actually approximates that already, as I'll show you here in a little bit. So 2015, it was right here. We bought at 1841. And then what did the market do here in the next few months? What did my son think of Dad's investment advice at this point? Not so hot, right? So I'm like, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. It's not, chill out. He wasn't that worried, but he was a little bit. I'm like, you're in it for the long haul. Remember our talks about the stock market goes up and down and you're capturing the long-term trend? Well, as you can see, it did pan out, right? Now, what he's been doing, though, is the dollar cost averaging that I kept telling you about, which you guys are going to do when you have the opportunity to get your first job and they might have a retirement plan of some sort, and you're going to be putting in X amount per month, $100 per month, $200 a month, whatever it is. So he's been doing $50 a month And so look at how much of a genius he looked like, because he was regularly putting in $50. This $50 made him a ton of money over time, right? This $50 a little less, this $50 a little less, this $50 a little less. This $50, again, genius, right? Made a ton of money on that $50. So what you're doing over time is you're not worrying about the ups and downs of the market. You're playing the long haul, and some of your investments are genius. You look like, oh gosh, you're a heck of a stock picker if you put in $50 here, and he did, right? So some of the $50 earns probably a 70% return, but some of the $50, like the one he earned here, only earned a 10% rate of return. And some of the $50, again, depending on where, with these are, that's at a peak now, but ultimately, came down. This one lost 20. This $50 lost 20%. So that's called dollar cost averaging, and it's a beautiful way to minimize your risk and not worry about the ups and downs of the economy, because you're playing the long game. You're on baby step number 4, which is what? How much? Baby step number 4? 15% of income going towards this stuff, right? 15% of your income going towards this stuff. So, and at that point, you're debt free. If you're following the baby steps, remember, we don't go ahead in the baby steps until you got the ones prior. That's why we call them baby steps. So you go forward. So you're not putting in 15% until baby step number 2 is done, which is your what? Debts are all paid. Student loans are gone. No car loans. You're debt free. You are in complete control of your money. Your budget looks great because your income is your own. You don't owe anybody a thing, right? You are totally debt free. That's a beautiful place to be all by itself. And then baby step number 3, 3 to 6 months of expenses are roughly your income, if you want to think of it that way. So if you're making $4,000 a month, you've got $12,000 in an account. If your engine craps out on you and it's a $3,000 repair bill, does it cause you to unplug your investments? No, you just pay for it. No big deal, $3,000 engine bill, and then you build up that emergency fund again, right? So life looks a lot different. You got a lot of financial peace moving forward, kind of organizing your financial affairs this way. All right, so here is his investment. So there's a thing called a prospectus, which now in today's age, it looks a little different. You used to get them in writing, but most of this, of course, is online now. So this is the thing he's been investing since he was, let's see, what is that, 6 years ago? He's 22 now. Yeah, so he was lucky he was 16 when he got this. And so you can pick up a share of the thing he owns today for $20.95. You can buy a share of it. And what are you participating in? You're participating in a fund that is worth this. Who can read out that number? Can you see that far? That's a big ass number. Tell me what the first 3, like 370 what? Million? So $370 million is what you just participated in. Does $370 million have some power on Wall Street? Yeah, so now my 16-year-old son is participating in that type of financial instrument. Pretty big deal, right? And pretty easy entry into it. So then you can read about their goals of what they're trying to do. We won't look through all of this here. Here's the performance. So 1 year was 22%. If we go backwards 1 year. So 1 year was approximately COVID-ish time, right? So they've been doing pretty good. 3-year return, 10%. Remember, I'm telling you, we're going to be kind of, for financial planning purposes, planning 8 to 10% range. And again, we're seeing that bear out here with a 5-year return, a 10-year return, and then the lifetime of the fund. The lifetime of the fund, I can't remember how far back that goes, but I'll show you in a second with a different graph, is right in that range. So let me show you for a sec here before we continue on with that. Here's his quarterly statements. that he gets from American Century. He's doing a IRA, which we're going to talk about this next chapter. So the next chapter is kind of related to this chapter, by the way. And so that's kind of a neat thing that I'll talk more about. He had, at this time, this was back a year ago, $6,500 starting value. And then the ending value here was 52. This was over a quarter. How long is a quarter of a year? 3 months. This was 2020. So we go from January to March. What happened around that March time frame? COVID. Did COVID affect stock prices? You betcha. So it went down. So again, Carter's like, oh, this investing stuff might be a little questionable, but he had already seen the gains. Here's the stock price. Today it's at 20. I just showed you online, right? It was at 18. It dropped to 13.94. And so then the value of Carter's investments dropped to 5,200, relatively speaking, because the share price of the mutual fund dropped. And then let's see, where's that rate of return? Is that on this side? Yeah, that's on this side. Okay. So at the end of 2020, here is my son's return since he put in his hard-earned money for the last 6 years or 5 years, I guess at this point, 5.5 or whatever. So average annual return. Ooh, right? Dad, this shit ain't working, right? I mean, this is 5 years into it. He's earned effectively a 2% rate of return. Dad, you said it was going to be between 8 and 12%, right? Hold on. Be patient. Be patient, right? And so now, let's see. I don't have his recent one, but I did look at it. It was, I think, 12 and a half. Here was his 2019 statement, 10% rate of return. Here is his 2018 statement, 12.02. So what is that all reflecting? Well, if we go back to this picture here, which is actually just off of Google, it's just reflecting these ups and downs. And remember, he was still earning the 50 bucks, the 50 bucks, the 50 bucks. It was spread out over time. And so this fund goes back all the way to 2004 over time, and that's what we've seen. So over the last, roughly 5 years, you've got these different rates of return depending on the time frame. And so it is back up to his recent quarterly statement. Once the COVID rebound came back, it's back to like I said, 12.5% return. And I think now that he's continued to put in $50, he's at 80. I think it was around 8,000 is what he's got in there. So let me pause for questions on what you saw so far. Yeah.
So I know you're playing a very like for the long term, but you know what's now.
Ah, great question. When you retire. So that'll be a little bit of what we're doing next chapter. So this is long-term investments. We're picking a fund that is well diversified, following the 25% because we have lots of data that shows you are going to earn 8 to 12% in the long run if you do that, right? So we have lots of historical data that says that's a solid thing to do. And so what we're going to be doing is working it backwards of when you want to retire and figuring out how much you need to contribute. And so we're not ever, I don't move my money around. And like I said, I got a PhD in economics. I think this stuff is fun. But when I played around with single stocks, I lost a lot of money. I can't remember if I told you guys that I'm teaching investment finance right now too, but I even had kind of inside information. I played poker with the owners of this company that was going public. And so I put $3,500 into an option, which, we don't get into this class, but basically a thing that could have made me a lot of money because when they went public, the stock price was going to go up and boom, I would triple my money or whatever, lost it all. All 3,500 is gone. So even with me having what I thought was inside information, I'm playing poker with the owners of this company that's going public, and I still lost, right? So I'm like, oh, screw it. I'm going to go back to this stuff that I'm teaching you guys. The single stock stuff is just not the road to riches. It'll eventually catch up to you. You might have some early wins. Certainly, Caleb, you made some money on GameStop, right? So you might have some early wins. And like I said, just remember, you gambled. You didn't do this. So it's okay to gamble. Just know what you're doing, right? And have a plan for long-term retirement that looks like this. And then if you've got a little extra money in your budget, or maybe even up to 10% of your long-term holdings, you can shift into a little bit more of, let's call it fun money, and doing these little investments here or there. But don't put everything into it. My other investing story actually started off when I was a junior in high school. I was hot to trot on being a millionaire doing stock investing, and did my research, and I found a penny stock that was called Denpak, the Denpak Corporation. And I put $500 as a junior in high school. That was a lot of money, especially 30 years ago, right? Yeah, probably about 30 years ago. A little more than 30 years ago. So $500 in, did my research. They had a new filling process. They had a machine that cured your filling. When you go to the dentist and you got that filling, and they had some sort of machine that cured it faster. So I put the money in and watched it slowly dwindle to zero over the next 2 years. Another loser. So that was my experience in playing the market. In hindsight, I'm really glad I had those kind of early losses. My loss with the $3,500 option, that was actually later in life. And but both of those losses I kind of liked, in that it taught me these lessons. And so hopefully you can learn them without getting burned too bad. Okay, so any other questions or comments? That was a good one, Raymond. Abby.
I don't know if this is true, but you started with $2,000 a year, right?
Yes.
Up to over $8,000 or whatever. So when it goes more and more, like the lot, when they crash or whatever, say it's around his retirement time and he's up to how much money he's up to.
Yeah.
Will the loss be less than what it is from his amount of money there's smaller right now? What if it's super low when you're getting ready to retire?
Yeah, so let me just show you with this picture to see if I'm understanding you right. So let's pretend this is 30-year time frame rather than just 2.
Right.
And it falls here when you're ready to retire, and it's time to pull it out.
Yeah.
Okay, so the answer is yes, you would have eroded some of your lifetime earnings, but you'd still have some, right? And so a lot of people found this with the financial crisis, that they had say, let's say they reached their goal of $1 million, and then the 2008 financial crisis wiped out 25%. So now they're down to 750,000, and then they have to, maybe stay employed a little bit longer because they're thinking 750 wasn't enough or whatever. And so that can happen. But again, even with the financial crisis, the stock market rebounded in a couple of years back to the original levels. So it didn't take too long to do that. Here's the other thing with retirement that I think would address your question. When you reach retirement, you're not going to pull it all out, right? So you're going to be using parts of that to live off of. This is jumping the gun a little bit, but you see how, let's say you have $1 million, and that $1 million is now earning 10%. Those of you who were at the thing heard me talk about skimming the cream off the top. So when you reach retirement, you've got $1 million. If that $1 million earned 10%, how much did you make this year? $100,000. And so then if you live off of that 100,000, you still have the $1 million left, right? So you're still going to have all that, and so you will likely ride out this downturn, and before you'd be pulling all your money out, you'd be fine. Now, some seniors though might have ran for cover and made the mistake of pulling it out and just lived out to 750 because they were scared. But that wouldn't be the normal case. Okay, anybody else? Okay, so this let's kind of track what Carter has been doing. So he put in $2,000 originally. He's only putting in $50 a month. He's been earning 12% on average, short of that financial crisis. But now he started when he was 15, so I'm going to put 45 years in to get him up to basically 60. I'm kind of going back in time when he was 16 years old, right? 16, 15 years old. And so what is $50 a month if you started that young and did it? Well, if your eyes are that good, I didn't hear anybody gasp and say, wow. But can I hear a wow?
Wow. That's crazy.
1.5 million. As a decision as a 16-year-old. I didn't force him to do it. He wanted to invest it. I helped him along, but and same thing with the $50 a month. He's been disciplined at putting the 50 in. That's not something I've done. So on these statements, just to give you an idea of the dollar cost averaging, this was his annual statement, not a quarterly statement. So January 1st, March, February, all the way down through the years, he's been putting in $50, $50, $50, $50, $50. You can see the share price varying, 16, 17, the market's up, the market's down, 17, and that's all he's doing. He's just continuing to put in that amount of money. And so here's the more startling thing that you might not have caught. When he started with 2,000 and he kept putting in $50 for 45 years, how much money how much of his own money did he actually contribute? 30,000, 29,000. And so, I mean, it's hilarious, right? He put in 29,000 and it's worth 1.5 million. That's what you guys can do too. I mean, you're not too far off from that, but you got to put it in the right place and make sure that it's getting the right rate of return that you'd like to expect. So that's the hockey stick. If we look at Carter's early years here, it didn't do that much, right? So the interest on interest thing really starts to kick in the second half. So for 20 years, Dad, this is kind of working. I see it's building up, but it's not 1.5 million. Hold tight, right? Trust the data. Trust the financial compound calculator. That's not somebody's opinion. That is the way these numbers work. And the way those numbers work is that you're going to see this acceleration of interest on interest. And it's going to come a lot sooner than 40 years. He hit his $1 million here at right around, what was that, 42 or something, is approximately when his investments became worth $1 million. All right, and then it might be time to retire. When your investments, if you're earning, let's say you're at a job and you're earning $80,000 a year, and you've been doing this, and now you can retire, and if you've got $1 million worth of investments, and you're making $100,000, your investments are paying you more than you were making at your job. Sounds like a good time to retire. That'll be part of the retirement planning too, is to think about what income you're trying to replace as you move into retirement. Okay, any other questions there? Yes?
Do you know, like, what percent the stock has to be at?
So your investment is going to be based on, you're going to look at some that with their historical average. So if you were thinking about this one, for instance, you might look at their past performance. Let me zoom this out a little bit. You know, what are they investing in, first of all, because that part of the equation is large cap, small cap, mid cap, international. So you're picking funds, but now we're to the level of, should I do Vanguard or should I do 20th Century, or what should I do, whatever my employer's offering? And so then the names, that what he was saying in the video is that the names of these mutual funds will say stuff that's like the industry standard language. It'll say like large cap, small cap, mid cap, and you'll know the type of investment that you're doing. So if you have a few to choose from then you're going to look at some of their past performance, but past performance, of course, doesn't guarantee future performance. You might take a peek at who's managing. So this portfolio, and by the way, I didn't get to this one that I meant to. So here's those past performance numbers that was in that chart, the 3-year return, the 5-year return. So kind of look at the lifetime. You should be able to find, you know, this lifetime, is that indicative of what's going on today? Maybe not, maybe it is. Look at that compared to other funds. So you're always kind of comparing the fund to like the benchmarks, like the S&P 500 that I talked about, those indices. You can compare a single mutual fund, how is it comparing to just the S&P 500? So that's usually a benchmark that can be used. And then here is the portfolio. So the inner circle shows that Carter is investing in 100% stock funds, which is, we're not doing bonds, right? From the early videos, we're going to avoid bonds because the annual average performance isn't as high as stocks. And if you're in it for the long haul and you're diversified, you're really not taking on much risk. So 12% large company value funds. And then as you go around the ring here, international, sustainable equity, growth funds, heritage funds, emerging markets. So that would be smaller companies and mid-cap funds, focused dynamic growth fund, intrinsic value funds. So they are actually investing in other funds. So this is like a fund of a fund even. And so this is really diversified, kind of capturing the whole market in equities, both international. So I'm pretty happy with that breakdown. So if my son wants to keep it, I'm not going to say, you've got to go 25-25. If it didn't look like that, then I'd probably be advising that you change. Okay, anything else? This is the last thing I just want to show you. These are the guys and gals on Wall Street that are watching this fund. So their job every day is to manage the $370 billion fund. That's what these 5 people do. So each fund will be associated with some senior advisors. These are the Wall Street gurus that are doing all your homework, so you don't have to. You don't have to be looking at it. You just put in your 50 bucks, put in your 50 bucks, put in your 50 bucks, check it every once in a while. Maybe you change a few things after a year or two, but otherwise, put in your money, don't look at it if you want to, but don't panic, don't move your money around, just keep pressing on. Dollar cost averaging. Okay, anything else? Fun stuff. All right, let's see here. So let's do some of the case studies. So we're going to start off with Lily. I want to write on your papers Lily's inheritance. So Lily's inheritance. Lily graduated from college 3 years ago with a degree in English. She is now a high school English teacher at a private school. She just inherited 25 grand from her grandma and grandpa and is very excited about investing the money and watching it grow. However, she has $2,000 worth of credit card debt and $15,000 in student loans. So, would it be better for Lily to invest the money and watch it grow? Or should she pay off her credit card and student loans before investing her money? So basically, I'm asking, you can kind of think about that, but I want you to answer number 3. What would you tell Lily to do with the $25,000? Explain your answer. Oh, let's see, where do we live off? So 1, 2, 3, 4. Michael, you got it for this.
I said I would tell her to pay any and all debt with the money that she gets, save $1,000 for an emergency fund, and then if she wants, she can spend the rest on investing.
Okay. So it's okay for her to invest a little bit as she does the other stuff first, pay off debt. Okay. Anybody have anything different for Lily? All right, good. So you just marching down the baby step list, right? So make sure she's got 1,000. So that's kind of, if we think of that first, pay off all the debt. So she's got that built up. Then she's into the 3 to 6 months of her emergency fund, but she's looking pretty good at that point. So with 2,000 and 15,000, we've got 17,000 worth of debt. That's gone. That leaves her with what, 8,000? So yeah, she might have a little bit left over to start investing, but the main thing is now she's got 15% by marching up to 3 to 6 months of emergency fund. She's ready to start putting 15% of her paychecks away. And that can be part of the fun of investing too. And she's in a lot better position to ride out these ups and downs as we were going through. All right, so that's Lily. Let's see, Jackson and Tanner. So Jackson's a senior in college. His friend Tanner are very close and talk openly, including money and investments. Tanner is a business major and tells Jackson that he should put all of his savings into a stock of an internet company that's doing well. He claims that this is a sure way to make money. Jackson is hesitant, but also confused because he knows very little about investing. Is Tanner giving Jackson sound advice? So go ahead and answer just number 1 only. And then make sure you put why or why not. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4. Josh, what did you think about this?
I should know.
Okay, and why?
I said you never want to throw any money into a stock.
Okay, good. So that's one reason. I'm sure a lot of you put that. That single stock, nobody can predict what it's going to look like in a shorter amount of time. What else did anybody else add something different first? Add on to that, yeah. Good, yeah. So, he's a college student. What does he know? He might know a decent amount, but, and we talked about whoever's giving you investment advice should be like a teacher that's telling you what it's like. And so instead of just, relying on somebody's advice, whoever that is investing a good thing for Jackson to do at this time? So 1, 2, 3, 4, Caleb. Is investing a good thing for Jackson to do at this time? You didn't have to write this one down. We're just going to have a little discussion.
I don't think it's a horrible thing to do. I don't know if he has things to pay off yet. If he doesn't have any debts and he has an emergency fund, then yeah, it would be not a bad idea to start investing.
Okay.
But to invest into one stock with all of his money.
So that's like the final exam right answer that'll get you points on the final. So is anybody ready to do investing? Go down the baby step list. That's it. I mean, that's what we're doing. If you've got baby steps 1 through 3 knocked out, then yeah, you can start entertaining doing some investing. It still might not be ready for Jackson depending on whatever other circumstances. So with a case study like this, you kind of worded it nicely, Caleb, on saying it depends, and then here's conditions where it might work, here's conditions where it might not, right? As a student, is he halfway through school and he's looking to take on student loan debt? Well, then it's kind of a, no, you shouldn't be investing, take on less debt as a student or minimize that as much as possible. Put that money to other purposes like your schooling. So, what does that 5-year window look like for a college student like this? That's part of the equation, depending on what it looks like. He may or may not be ready for that. Okay, let's do Jeff's investment timing here. So Jeff recently graduated from a state university with a degree in art history. He has no student loans and has saved $7,000 toward retirement while in school. He's heard rumors about the stock market being unstable right now, and he has friends his age who have been seeing their investment accounts go down in value. Jeff has decided to keep his money in a savings account until the mutual fund returns look better. Then he will invest the money. So he recently graduated from college, so he's doing okay, first of all, right? So in terms of baby steps here, he has no student loans, right? So he's good there. $7,000 towards retirement. He's just starting his retirement path of putting it into mutual funds and all of that. So Jeff decided to pull his money out and keep it safe in a savings account until the mutual fund, comes back to looking better. You saw how with my sons it goes to 2% and 5%, 7%. So he's going to wait until it's showing a good return. Oh yeah, now that it's back up to 12%. I'm going to jump back in. Is everybody clear with what they're kind of asking? So did Jeff make a good decision to keep his money in a savings account until it goes back up? We'll just have an open discussion on this one. We'll start with a person randomly chosen. 1, 2, 3, 4. Anna. So did Jeff with this timing, so he basically had $7,000 in a mutual fund, and now because the stock market's down, he pulled it out to put it in savings account so that it's safe, right? So the market was crashing, going down, and so he pulled his 7,000. So is that a good idea?
I mean, I would say so, just because you'd rather be saving.
Okay. Wrong answer. What is the right answer? Abby?
Well, wouldn't it be cheaper to buy in when it's down and then it will go more?
Yeah. So, what was the dollar cost averaging concept, Anna? Dollar cost averaging that I've been talking about all hour.
Yeah.
Have you not been plugged in too much? Or you got some daydreaming about a special someone or something? Something troubled in your life, or are you just kind of spacing off today? Because I was a little surprised when you say, okay, what's the question? I tried to extra time to tee that one up. So what was dollar cost averaging? No idea? Who wants to help out? What's dollar cost averaging? For investments, it's kind of a technique. What are you doing when Carter was my son has been dollar cost averaging since he was 16. What is he doing? How much is he putting in every month? $50. Stock market's up, $50. Stock market's down, $50. $50, $50. The averaging part, the dollar cost averaging, is that you're putting a fixed amount, and what you're averaging is those rates of return over time. So that some of the $50 gets a 2% return, some of the $50 gets a 22% return, some of the $50 has a 10% rate of return, right? So when we go back to the story, and this is so important, I want you guys to really latch on to this. So when the stock market looks like this $50 looks awful when the stock market's down, or even here, but this $50 looks great. So you're putting in $50, $50, $50. So you're averaging the rate of return over time on that money. Some of the $50 was 2%. Some of it was that Carter now over the last 6 years has averaged 12% on his $50 per month investment. Dollar cost averaging. Okay, so what's wrong then? I think, Abby, you were starting to put it together. Let me let you finish. I don't remember where you were at or if you said your piece, but what was wrong with Jeff's thing here on bringing the money to, and by the way, Anna, you said exactly what most people might think, but it's because you weren't paying attention. But I'll forgive you for that. I really forgive you. But that is what most people think, right? Because it makes kind of sense. But what they're missing is what maybe Abby's going to say, or I'm going to pluck out of somebody else. So what's wrong? What's the fallacy with that?
Well, because they can buy more shares when the market's lower because the cost of the shares are cheaper.
Yeah. So right now, your $50 or however amount is buying a lot more of the shares. And if you're in it for the long haul, you look like a financial genius buying when the market is down. And in fact, here's the worst part. When Jeff waits until the fund is showing 12% again, when is he putting in? At the height. He's actually freaking doing this. Stock market crashes, so his money's here. Stock market goes down, he pulls it out to safety, misses all of this growth, and then buys here until it crashes again. And then he keeps repeating, rinse, and you're a loser if you do that, right? So you need to pick up those times when the stock is a good bargain. And as long as you are following the underlying fundamentals of diversification, large cap, small cap, mid cap, international, blah, 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 you are exactly doing that. You are picking up strong, long-term investments. Some of them you're buying at bargains, other times not so big of bargains. But when you start down here, way back when, you are dollar cost averaging up to here. You're going to have more with where you initially started, even if the stock market's down. Okay, make sense? All right. Let's see, I think that's good for that one. All right, so I'm gonna have you do this last video on your own. So let me kind of give you a little rundown here. He's gonna bring up Ben and Arthur again. You remember Ben and Arthur? I bet part of my son's story is I showed him Ben and Arthur. I showed him this exact chart. I brought it home one day and showed him what $2,000 per year for the 8 years and then stop investing. And his brother Arthur starts 8 years later and does it for the rest of his life. And the moral of the story is Arthur never catches up to Ben by the time they get to 65. So start early is kind of the moral of that story. And we're going to spend chapter 12 talking about real estate. So he mentions it here, but we're going to spend a whole chapter on investing in real estate as a possibility too. And then he's going to eventually get into some bad investments, things to avoid. And if Bitcoin was around strong back then, he would have said Bitcoin. I am, by the way, taking a fraction of my long-term wealth and investing in Bitcoin. So I'm not meaning to trash Bitcoin. I've actually changed a little bit on Bitcoin for reasons that you have to take my macroeconomics class, and I'll be happy to tell you. But I am taking a long position in Bitcoin. So I've been dollar cost averaging. I bought Bitcoin last October at $100 because of there it was just fun money. That was like not really long-term investing. And it went from 13,000 and today it's up to 50. Actually, I'm kind of curious. I'm gonna check. It was at 57 and traded at 55. I bought at 47, 51. I've been doing it for the last 3 weeks. I'm dollar cost averaging my investment into it. And right now it's at 48,000. So 48,000. And yesterday, what did I buy it? I just lost money is what I did. I bought it at 54. It's down to 48 today. So that is the ride that I'm on right now, but for reasons I can't get into here, I am in it for the long haul. So I'm taking a 10, 15-year position on Bitcoin, and I'm not putting a lot of money into it, but I'm putting some of it. That 10% chunk, I've decided to go a long position on that. All right, so that is all of the chapters. So by Wednesday, you have your this chapter 10 material is due. And your homework kind of for tonight is to do any late homework, as I sent out the email. If you've got any late stuff, you need to be making it up. And then watch the last video section of chapter 10. See you tomorrow.